Ooh, we got a juicy one tonight. A lot of stuff to talk about. It was so much I had to go and do a separate video to take away some of the things that would have added even more time to this pod because there were so many items that I wanted to touch upon. And so I can briefly gloss over that now because I can just redirect you to the other video. Excellent, excellent Untold on Johnny Manziel. We're going to talk about that. Preseason football is upon us. We have games tomorrow. AFC West on the docket tonight as we start breaking down these divisions and these teams and talk about what kind of a season I think these teams are going to have. And I want to hear what you think about some of these teams and what you think they're going to do. We're going to run the full gamut with these teams, talk about their offseason and what we think is going to become of their season in 2023. All of that and more here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. As the calendar turns to August, it can only mean one thing. The NFL season is right around the corner. And with that in mind, the Louie T Network exclusives are back like cook crack. Choose from any of the three or all three of the LTN exclusives, Winners and Losers League, Soul Survivor Pool, Weekly Pick'em, all at your fingertips. Links are down in the description along with the video to help you sign up. Don't sit on the sideline. Get in the game. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 354th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, a lot of things to talk about. It's been a little bit since we did a podcast episode, so it feels like there's a lot that we need to discuss, kind of catching up on a lot of topics that may have transpired since the last time we talked. But Hard Knocks was last night. Watched the episode. It was good. And I think it's going to be a really good season of Hard Knocks this year. It's rare, and I said this on the video, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I created that video specifically for the purpose of not having to spend too much time on the podcast talking about Hard Knocks. But it's rare that we get a Super Bowl contending team on Hard Knocks for various reasons. We know all the reasons why. Usually if you're on Hard Knocks, it's because you didn't make the playoffs the year before. It's rare that a team that didn't make the playoffs before is a Super Bowl contender, but that's what happens when you get a guy the caliber of an Aaron Rodgers added to your roster. At the quarterback position, it changes everything. So it's not often that takes place, that you feel like the team on Hard Knocks can actually win a Super Bowl. I mean, we've seen Jameis Winston in the Bucks. We've seen the Dallas Cowboys. We knew they weren't winning shit. The Detroit Lions last year. These are some of the teams that have been on Hard Knocks here recently, and we knew they weren't going to win a damn thing, right? This feels like a team that could actually go all the way. So some funny moments. Go check out the video that I uploaded if you want my take on the first episode, and I'll be recapping all of the episodes. I think there are 4 or 5 episodes of Hard Knocks that you get. Think it's 5. I'll be doing a recap for all of them, however many there are. Had a chance to watch the Johnny Manziel Untold. If you haven't done so, first of all, the Untold series on Netflix is a gem in itself. I don't know if you, and I think I've brought this to you guys before because there have been, various documentaries. There was the first one I saw, and I think it's the first episode anyway, was this college basketball point shaving scandal with, I think they were at Arizona State, I think. This was the mid-90s. And man, it was good. Oh, it was good. So Untold has done a beautiful job. They had the Tim Donaghy story as well. So many different stories up there, but the recent one that they put out, and they got another one with Jake Paul. I'm not interested, but one of the latest ones they put out was Johnny Manziel. And what a story. And, we all got sucked into the Johnny football, um, that whole ordeal. Like, I don't think people realize how big Johnny Manziel was in 13 and 14, those years at Texas A&M. He was in that 2014 NFL draft, and it was one of the worst quarterback drafts in recent memory. If you guys recall, it was Blake Bortles, Christian Ponder, Jake Locker, and Johnny Manziel. And I want to say Teddy Bridgewater was the fifth and final quarterback taken in the first round by the Vikings. And so 5 quarterbacks win the first round that year, if I'm not mistaken. And they all sucked ass. I might be off on Ponder and Locker. They might have been in another draft. I think they were in that draft too, though. Might be mixing my drafts up. I feel like Ponder and Locker were in like the 11 draft or some shit like that. I think it might have just been Bortles, Bridgewater, because we didn't have 5 quarterbacks going the first round until like 2020 or 2018, whatever draft it was with Mahomes and Jackson. So those 2 couldn't have been in there. They have to be in the 11 draft. I feel like Ponder and Locker are in the 11 draft, and it's just Blake Bortles, Johnny Manziel, and Teddy Bridgewater, who were in that 14 draft. Either way, it sucked. Yes, because those 2 were in the draft with Cam Newton, and Newton was in the 11 draft. So let me get my shit straight. Anyway, Manziel, they take you through his whole journey from high school to college. And like, I was telling my wife, she was watching it with me, and I was like, I don't think people understand, because she was like, can you believe how much shit he went through and did, and how they still support him? I'm like, she was like, if he was black, they wouldn't be supporting him like that. But I said, this is the thing you have to understand. And I don't think she really got it. And I was trying to explain it to her. I'm like, black, white, green, purple, when it comes to collegiate sports, it's worse than anything, especially collegiate football, right? When you talk about college football, the pedestal that these players are put on when they play at a very high level at these schools with rabid fan bases and boosters that have, millions upon millions and sometimes billions of dollars is insane. The amount of money Johnny Manziel made Texas A&M, they literally built a brand new stadium, changed the face of their recruiting. So what the story did a great job of outlining was the fact that Johnny Manziel's first year starting in college football was also the first year that Texas A&M was in the SEC. A lot of people forget they were in the Big 12 once upon a time, and they sucked in the Big 12. They were a middle of the pack to a lower tier team in the Big 12. So coming into the best conference in football, no one was expecting anything out of Texas A&M. And here comes this kid, Johnny Manziel, takes the college football landscape by storm. And that 2012 season was just crazy. I remember that Bama game because nobody was giving them a chance. And they were supposed to get smoked in that game. And Bama was a powerhouse at that time. And they've been a powerhouse for, the better part of a decade and a half, almost what it feels like. But at that time, they were just really climbing to the height that they are at now. Bama was. And Manziel goes into Tuscaloosa, and they jumped those boys immediately. And I remember thinking, oh my God, because you just don't see that happen to Alabama. But they came back, and I thought they were going to beat them. And then Johnny Manziel took them down the field. They scored another touchdown. They held on for the victory. And I just remember those people going crazy. It was akin to like when Auburn beat Alabama on the kick six, or when Cam Newton won them a national championship. You get quarterbacks that come in and transcend your program, and it changes everything. That's what Johnny Manziel was for Texas A&M. It's akin to what Vince Young represented for Texas. Like, Texas was this proud, storied franchise or program that hadn't won in such a long time. You probably got to go back to like the Earl Campbell days. They hadn't won anything of note in so long at Texas. And then here comes Vince Young, and what he was able to do. Like, Vince has had his issues off the field just like Johnny has. He's still worshipped at the University of Texas. And that's what I was trying to explain to my wife. Like, there's no more rabid fan base than a college football program that their fans absolutely love and would do anything for the program, right? Especially when you're talking about Texas football. There's nothing bigger in the state of Texas than the sport of football. And so she was just amazed at how, many people still love Johnny Manziel after all of the shit that he had, gone through. And I just said, you don't understand what he did for that university. Like, they're not Texas. The Texas A&M that we know now, they're not that without Johnny Manziel. And so it takes you through the 2012 season, him winning the Heisman as a freshman, 2013, and Johnny like, yo, I got to get my hand on some of this bread. Him and his friend and all the shit that they were doing, and it was crazy hearing the stories. Then they beat the NCAA case, and then they go right back to signing autographs. Soon as they beat the case, right? Johnny gets suspended a half of football to start 2013. By then, Johnny was partying. He was doing all of those off the field things, and he started to care less about football, because when he actually showed up to Texas A&M, he was like, football. Oh, he was never the study type guy. He was never, the guy that was putting in extra work, but he loved football at that time. I think there was a culmination of things, the investigation that the NCAA did on him, not being able to reap the benefits. Could you imagine, and I was telling my wife this, could you imagine the NIL money a guy like Johnny Manziel or Vince Young or some of these massive college football stars, Reginald Bush, Matt Leinart, could you imagine how much money these dudes would have been raking in NIL deals had they been able to take advantage of their name, image, and likeness when they were in school? I mean, it's amazing when you think about some of the stars of college sports going back the last 15 to 20 years. You just think of guys like J.J. Redick at Duke. Do you know how much money he would have made before getting to the NBA? Do you realize how much money a guy like Johnny Manziel would have made before getting to the NFL? With the money in 2013, he started doing the money thing because of the NCAA. But even in 2012, when he was tearing it up and leading Texas A&M to a bowl game and beating Alabama on the road, like, he would have made like money hand over fist. But that wasn't the case back in those days. The NCAA wasn't allowing you to make anything off the field. And they actually had a separate division aimed at just investigating players that they felt like were breaking the rules. So it was quite the story. So he gets to the NFL. After 2013, he's like, I'm done with college football. He only played 2 years at Texas A&M. He's like, I'm done with football, or done with A&M. And so he enters into the draft. And I didn't realize just how bad people were killing him coming out of A&M. Now, that part I don't remember. Merrill Hodge had just a stinging, I'm talking about one of the most scathing breakdowns of Johnny Manziel. And if you were to take this guy, you're going to be fired in 2 years. And everything that Merrill Hodge said was absolutely spot on. But at the time, it was like, God damn, he's killing. Skip Bayless did his thing where you're so wrong. You can't be more wrong. Merrill, and like Skip always is, he was wrong as hell, like he always is. And Merrill Hodge was right. But it was crazy listening to the agent because I love these stories. These are the stories I love. I love the story of the agent and him doing his job and being so good at his job, he can fool an NFL team into spending a first round pick. So his job was to take Johnny and make some of the stuff that happened to him when he was in college, the Scooby-Doo suit, some of the off the field shenanigans, being drunk, um, getting into a domestic spat with his girlfriend, all that. His job was to, and I think the domestic stuff was after he made it to the NFL, but he had a number of other things, almost getting suspended multiple times, then finally getting suspended, not showing up for certain things, showing up drunk. Like the stories were out there. So it was the agent's job to keep Johnny clean for the 2-month period after the college football season into the combine, right? To get him ready for the draft. And Johnny effed up right before the draft, or the combine, rather. So agent is like, how bad is it? And, Johnny's like, look, I just woke up in a hotel room. I don't know how I got there. I'm not going to pass the drug test. I probably won't pass the drug test. So the agent starts freaking out, and he finds out that Johnny used to pass all of his tests at Texas A&M by using the third string quarterback's piss. So he's like, oh, shit. We got to figure something out. So he told Johnny, look, your mom or your dad is going to have to end up in the hospital. You're going to go to the combine for 12 hours, and before they can drug test you, you're going to get out of there and you're going to have an excuse. And, his dad at that point was like, yo, I'm sick of this dude, man. Like, I really, truly am getting up to here with Johnny's antics. But they were going to do it. Like, if Johnny would have said, nah, we doing this, they were ready to be down for the cause, right? Which makes you think, when some shit goes down, how legitimate is it? Like, you never want to question a family member being in a hospital, but after seeing that, you're like, that's some interesting shit. Anyway, so Johnny's like, nah, we ain't doing that. I'm not dragging my parents into this. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just drink mad water. I'm going to piss this stuff out of my system. I've done this a bunch of times. We're going to be good. And the agent was taking a bunch of piss tests up to Johnny's room at the combine in Indy. And sure enough, he said he ended up on the elevator with like 4 or 5 different GMs trying to hide the piss test and all that stuff. Made it to Johnny's room, and they were able to, keep pumping him full of water. He obviously he passed the test, killed all the interviews, went out, threw the ball well at the combine. And so all of a sudden, Johnny went from a guy that was probably gonna be like a 3rd round pick into the 1st round. Now the question was, who was going to take him? And we know the story. He thought he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy. Boy, that would have been great to see. Wouldn't it have? Johnny, man, like, they seemed like a match made in heaven. I remember that draft and thinking, oh my God, he's going to end up in Dallas. This is going to be crazy. And I didn't know if he was going to be a good player or not. I just said, that's going to be theater. Jerry Jones and Johnny Manziel. And the Cowboys did the responsible thing. They took Zach Martin, like, to hell with Johnny Manziel. They did the responsible thing, and it worked out for them, obviously. The Browns traded up 2 spots to get their hands on Johnny Manziel, and it was a nightmare from that point on. And, he talked about studying zero. Like, the Browns went to his agent and said, hey, your guy's not studying at all. He's got 0.0 iPad hours. And he goes to Johnny and they pan to Johnny, and Johnny's like, bro, I watched 0 film. But that was always who he was. It's not like he changed who he was. He didn't watch film at A&M. He didn't watch film in high school. He didn't watch film at all. And he's like, I was just a backyard football type of player, just make things happen. In the NFL, that shit don't work. You got to actually know what the hell is going on. You got to study the improv that you see in the NFL is based off of things breaking down. but you knowing where you need to go with the ball, and then them just, having the right play called or whatever the case may be, and now or you get instant pressure. You don't even get, your back foot doesn't hit the ground. You got to get out of there. Johnny he didn't even know where to go with the ball. He wanted to do that runaround shit. And in the NFL, where everybody's an athlete, that shit wasn't working. They was flinging his ass down on the ground. And, every time somebody sacked him, you were going to get this, right? So Johnny was like, F this. I got my bread. I'm out here in these streets. I'm living my life. But he went to rehab to try to get his shit together. He came out and he was doing well for like 2 seconds, for a hot second, and then he wasn't. And so he got caught up. He went to party in Vegas. He missed the final flight to get him back to Cleveland, and that was the final straw. They cut him. And he talked about this, and there was an ESPN article about this. He said, I went on like a $5 million bender, and I was going to spend all my money, and then I was going to kill myself. And I mean, that's surreal. Like, hearing that is like, whoa, he had hit rock bottom. And I was shocked that something didn't happen to Johnny Manziel, honestly, with the way he was living his lifestyle. We remember, we all saw, and I remember talking about it on this very program. We saw the picture of him in it looked like a hotel or a casino bathroom. You could see the Coke lines on the counter in the reflection of the mirror, and the dollars, right? The rolled up bills. Like, yo, this dude is about to be on some Scarface shit. Like, he's about to literally go to the point of no return. And I was shocked that I'm not shocked that he thought about taking his own life, but I was shocked that something didn't happen to him, because he was out of control. Johnny Manziel was spiraling out of control. Like, he was the male version of like Lindsay Lohan when she was going through all of her shit. So he finally hit rock bottom. He spent all of his money up, and he had a gun, and he was going to shoot himself. And he said the gun just clicked. So obviously that meant the Lord wasn't done with him yet. Like, he still served a purpose here on earth. And so he went back home, and his dad had already said, I'm done with you. Like, I don't want nothing to do with you till you get your shit together. He went home, knocked on the door. Dad, answers the door, and he's like, bro, I got nowhere else to go. And they took him in. They helped him get his situation squared away, went to rehab, got his life together a little bit. And now that's where the story kind of ended. And anybody that knows anything about sobriety, that's an everyday struggle. You're not just better after going to rehab for 90 days, right? That's a struggle every single day to stay clean. And his sister, she's like, we were best friends growing up. She's like, my brother is still not in a position right now to, be given large quantities of money. Like, you couldn't put him in that environment and have Johnny be. The thing I did like, though, was hearing him speak and him taking accountability for everything. He didn't try to run from anything. He didn't try to blame anybody else. He didn't try to, put anything on anybody else. He shouldered all the blame, like, yo, I was tripping. I was out of control. Everything that happened to me was my fault. Nobody else's. Only thing that he was pissed off about was the NCAA and not being able to make money off of his name, image and likeness when he was in college, which is why he did what he did. And I don't necessarily blame him. They said that Texas A&M in that 2012 season where Johnny Manziel came on board and they went, I want to say like 10-2 that year and went to the bowl game. He helped pull in more than $760 million for the University of Texas A&M. And he didn't get any of that money. So It was a crazy story. It was so good. If you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor and watch that documentary. Anyway. All right. Let's get to our main event of the evening. Y'all know what it is. It's a gym dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, AFC West. We know who controls this division. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't tell you the last time they didn't win the division. That's a trivia question, as a matter of fact. Because they was winning the division with Alex Smith before Mahomes took over. Let's see. They won it in, I'm going to say the last time they didn't win the division was probably 2015. That's my guess. Somebody fact check me on that. Let me know. When's the last time the Kansas City Chiefs, they are literally the New England Patriots of the AFC now. There was a span of like probably 14 out of 15 years the Patriots won the AFC East. It was a given they were going to win it every year. The Chiefs are embarking upon a journey similar to that. I want to say Alex Smith won the AFC West 2 years in a row before turning the reins over to Mahomes in 2018. I know they went to the playoffs in 2016, but they didn't play a home playoff game in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. I could have my year wrong, but they were killing the Colts in the playoffs in Indy, and they blew like a 31-point lead or something like that in the playoffs. They were up like 41-10 or something like that, and they ended up losing that game. That was in Indy, though, so they couldn't have won the division. They wouldn't have been playing on the road in Wild Card Weekend. So I'm going to change my answer and say that they've won the division every year since 2016, because I think, or excuse me, 17, because they lost to the Steelers. Time out. Now I'm thinking about it. They lost 3 years in a row in the playoffs. The first year was, I'm keeping my answer there, because the first year I think was 15. They made it to the playoffs. That's the year they lost to the Colts, I think. I could be wrong about this, but I'm testing my memory. I like doing this. 16 was the year that they lost to, I think, the Titans. They blew 21-3 lead at halftime and ended up losing to. That's the year Mariota caught the pass to himself and scored a touchdown, and they came back and beat the Chiefs. That was a home game, so they won the division that year. And then I think 17 was the last straw, which is when they went out and they played the Steelers, and they didn't score a touchdown. I think the Steelers beat them with like 6 field goals or something like that. And that was the last straw. They went to Mahomes, traded Alex Smith. That was in 17. And then Mahomes took over in 18. So I'm going to say the last time they didn't win the division was 2015. I'm sticking with my answer. Final answer. So as we look at 2023, I don't see anything being different here. So the AFC West looked like this last year. 14-3 for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Super Bowl defending, let me put some respect on their name. Super Bowl defending Kansas City Chiefs, 14-3 last year. Won the division, obviously. Los Angeles Chargers were 10-7, made it to the playoffs as a wild card, blew a 27-0 lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars in wild card weekend. Just a heartbreaking way to exit the playoffs. And the Vegas Raiders were 6-11. That season ended in tragic fashion with them sending Derek Carr home with 2 games to go. And they were just so bad, were the Raiders. At one point, we thought they were going to be in the mix for the #1 overall pick. Then they got hot. Then they were not. And so they were 6-11. Denver 5-12. You know, they were one of the biggest disappointments of the season last year. The trade for Russell Wilson and all the expectations. 2 years in a row, teams have traded for quarterbacks, have hoisted the Lombardi the following year. Brady in 2020, Matthew Stafford in 21. So the thought process was, oh, here we go again with another veteran changing teams, and he's going to elevate them to the Super Bowl in 2022 with Russell Wilson and the Broncos, and Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson just were not a match made in heaven for them. And it got ugly quickly in Denver, and you could see where that was going. Their defense was championship caliber. Unfortunately, the offense was, I don't even know if that was USFL worthy offense that they were putting on the field. It was bad. So they end up 5-12, and they hit the reset button this year. New coach, new look. We'll talk about that. Let's start with the victors. To the victors go the spoils, right? To the winner go the spoils. So let's start with the Chiefs. And let's take a look at the Chiefs. And we'll do this for every team in the division. So what you're looking at is all of the offseason action for the Kansas City Chiefs. All the players that they've signed, all the players that they've lost, and their incoming draft class. So you kind of put all of this together. You look at the full body of work, what they've lost, what they've gained, what they drafted, and you figure out if you think they can do it again. Okay. So let's look at all the players that they lost. So Orlando Brown is no longer their left tackle. All right. You've got Frank Clark gone. He's now a member of the Denver Broncos, so he stays in the division. Juju Smith-Schuster has vacated and left for New England. He's a Patriot. Andrew Wiley, their starting tackle last year, right tackle, is now a member of the Washington Commanders. Ronald Jones II, not really a big contributor. He's now in Dallas. Mecole Hardman left in the offseason. He's now a member of the Jets. So they lost a little bit of speed there, but they got plenty to burn. Juan Thornhill signed a big deal in the offseason to go to the Browns. Kalen Saunders is now a member of the New Orleans Saints. So that's another loss to that defensive line. See if anymore. So those are the big names that are no longer in Kansas City. Look at the players that they have added to the roster. So you lose a left tackle, so you have to add one. So Donovan Smith is now on board here. This is another big one when you get down to Jawan Taylor. So that was one of their biggest acquisitions of the offseason, upgrading the right tackle position. They instead of spending the money, and it's crazy because they ended up spending more money on Jawan Taylor than Orlando Brown ended up getting from the Bengals. So just crazy how that works. Orlando Brown, he outpriced himself in the market. He thought he was worth more than what he ultimately got. And he could have gotten the same amount of money probably from the Chiefs, and he told them no. And he thought somebody else was going to pay him that money, and everybody else was like, nah, we good. And he ended up going to Cincinnati. But in any event, getting Jawan Taylor and then signing Donovan Smith, so they're kind of revamping that offensive line again in front of Mahomes. I'm anxious to see if this shit works because anybody will tell you that's a Buccaneers fan. Donovan Smith is ass. So he's sometimey. Sometimes he's good. Sometimes he's not. So that's going to be interesting to see if that line holds up. They brought back a bunch of guys. This is another interesting one. So Chad Henne retired, their backup quarterback. And we've seen him in some big spots come in and kind of stabilize things when Mahomes was out for whatever reason. Now Blaine Gabbert is in that position. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. He comes over from Tampa Bay. They added Richie James as a wide receiver, so a little bit more quickness there in the slot. Let's see. Mike Edwards, they added from the Bucks as a safety replacement for the loss of Juan Thornhill. And Drew Tranquil was a big get for them as well. Bringing him on board, you steal a guy away from a divisional foe and add him to the mix. They got a lot of speed at linebacker already, and you're just going to add another guy that can run, cover, do all of those things. So they got one of the better linebacking cores in the NFL, if you ask me. Adding Drew Tranquil to that definitely does not hurt that group. And then Charles Omenihu was a nice get for them too. He's a much cheaper option from Frank Clark. And I think he can get you just as much pressure as Frank Clark, if we're being honest. So that's all of the moves really of note for them this offseason. Then you look at the draft. Felix Ndike Uzama, they took in the first round out of K-State. So another edge rusher to bolster that group, after losing Carlos Dunlap, who they did not bring back as well. He's still out there, if I'm not mistaken, has not signed with anyone yet. So between Dunlap and Frank Clark, both of your guys off the edge from a season ago are gone. So bringing in Charles Omenihu and then drafting Felix Ndike Uzama out of K-State sort of fills that void for you. Rashid Rice is a guy that I really loved out of SMU, and I think he's going to fill that Juju Smith-Schuster void, that physical, contested catch wide receiver. That's what he's going to come in and be for them. So Wanye Morris, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. He's a guy that's going to come in and I think help that offensive line as well. Not this year, but probably next year. Tamari Connor out of Virginia Tech, BJ Thomas, Kanandre Coburn, and Nick Jones rounds out their draft class from 2023. So I think the first two guys are going to be impactful players for them in their rookie season. And nothing here screams, oh my God, the Chiefs are in trouble. And as long as you got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, you should be just fine. So let's look at their schedule real fast. And they start the season off. They won the Super Bowl, obviously. And so I'm looking at this first game, and it's gonna be a fun one. I don't think the Lions are going to be as good as everybody thinks. I'm not as high on the Lions as so many people are. But if you want to make a statement, here's where you're supposed to do it. I remember that 2017 Chiefs team that ended up being really good and started the season off like 5-0, 6-0, whatever it was. And the Patriots had won the Super Bowl the year before. And Alex Smith, Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, and Travis Kelce went into Foxborough and beat the brakes off of the Patriots. Put a 40 burger on them. Shocked everybody. If you want to make a statement, week one is the time to do it. On the road, obviously. That's what the Bills did last year. I mean, it didn't work out for them, but that's what the Bills did last year. Is they went to the Rams, and I always felt like that was a bad situation for the Rams. I think they're going to destroy the Lions in week one, but we'll see what happens. That's a Thursday night game. Jags in week number 2 on the road. That's a rematch of the divisional round game. That should be fun. Home for the Bears in week 3. Sunday Night Football, Jets. We're going to get Rodgers and Mahomes. I think we've missed that pairing twice. Every time they've been scheduled to play against each other, someone missed the game. I think Mahomes missed it the first time with an injury. And then I think Rodgers missed that game with COVID the second time we were supposed to get it. So I don't think we've had Rodgers Mahomes yet. So I think we'll finally get it for the first time. They'll be at the Jets on a Sunday night. That'll be a dandy. Vikings on the road, week 5. Home for the Broncos, Thursday Night Football, week 6. Chargers. So that's going to be an interesting stretch right there where you get 3 straight division games. 2 out of the 3 are against Denver. That's going to be a hell of a stretch for them right there. And you know the Chargers just don't give a damn when it comes to the Chiefs. They're the one team in that division that I think gives them fits. You got the Dolphins. That looks like a Monday night game. Looks like a Monday night. Oh, that's Germany. Excuse me. That's a Germany game against the Dolphins. They get the bye week in week 10. You come off the bye. You got a home tilt against the Eagles on a Monday night. That should be fun. Raiders on the road, week 12. Packers on the road on Sunday night, week 13. Home for Buffalo. That could have playoff implications late in the season. Patriots on a Monday night on the road in week 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prime timers. And then you got a Germany game. But look, they're the defending Super Bowl champion. And it's Patrick Mahomes, best player in the league. I get it. Christmas, you might as well count that as a primetime game because I think there are only 2 or 3 games on Christmas Day. So they're playing the Raiders at home. Bengals, again, another game that could have massive playoff implications. Week 17 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, a team who they have met each of the last 2 years in the AFC Championship. And then finally, week 18 on the road at the Chargers. Either that's going to be on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I'm assuming the standings and the importance of that game will determine if that's on the Saturday, the 6th, or if it's on Sunday, the 7th. So interesting schedule, a lot of tough games in there. It's exactly what you expect for a team the caliber of the Chiefs. And it's going to be interesting to see them navigate this schedule. When it's all said and done, until someone knocks them off the throne, off their perch, I just don't see this Chiefs team not winning the AFC West until somebody takes it from them. They were 14-3 last year. I got them 13-4 this year. I could see them being 12-5. It's a tough schedule, but they'll figure it out. They'll find a way. And when it's all said and done, they'll be right there in the mix, 13-4, battling for the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. So let's get to the next team up on the docket. And it's the Los Angeles Chargers. So this is a team that went 10-7 last year. Justin Herbert finally got a taste of playoff ball and was playing well early to start that game. I thought they were a little bit too cautious in the second half of that game in terms of play calling. They blew it, but it was good to see Herbert get a taste of playoff ball. Now it's time to take it to the next level. So let's look at all of the transactions made by the Chargers. We know the Chargers are not big spenders in free agency. Generally, they don't spend a ton of money, but they went out and they did a couple of things this offseason. Nothing, earth-shattering, but they did bring a couple of guys in. So let's just talk about this real quick. So Chargers, I talked about them losing Drew Tranquill. They brought in Eric Kendricks, and that pretty much spelled the end for Drew Tranquill in LA. They brought in, let's see, any more names. As you can see, not a lot of guys being brought in here by the Chargers that were on a different team a season ago. Just 2 if you're looking at this list. They don't do a lot in free agency. So, but they do usually do a good job of taking care of their own guys, which you can see here. A lot of the guys they've taken care of. Justin Herbert took care of him. Morgan Fox took care of him, brought him back. Let's see. Jalen Guyton brought him back. Trey Pipkins brought him back. Donald Parham brought him back. So they brought back quite a few. Cameron Dicker, the kicker, they brought him back. So Foster Sorrell. So they brought back a lot of their own guys. Let's talk about some of the guys that they lost. Matt Filer ends up in Tampa Bay. That could end up being a big loss for them. DeAndre Carter was huge for them last year. When they had injuries at the receiver position, he stepped up. He's now in Vegas with the Raiders. But they did enough in free agency, or rather the draft, to offset the loss of DeAndre Carter. So they'll be just fine in that department, or at least they should be. Christian Covington, they couldn't stop the run last year. They had issues. And so they're not going to miss any of these defensive linemen that are no longer here. Speaking of which, they lost another one. I think they had released your boy from Notre Dame, and he ended up going to the Raiders last year, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I digress. Troy Reader is now in Minnesota. Storm Norton, who was just a turnstile at tackle, is now in New Orleans with the Saints. Braden Fiocco is now with the Steelers. So, and I talked about Drew Tranquil already. And Michael Bandy is now in Denver. So nothing big here. No earth-shattering moves. As you can see, no more Kyle Van Noy, no more Chase Daniel, Bryce Callahan. They're all gone. Nasir Adderley retired in the offseason, which was a surprise to most people. But yeah, nothing here, again, sticks out. So you look at their draft. Quentin Johnston was their first-round pick out of TCU, big body receiver. Everyone thought they were going to go with a smaller, shiftier receiver that could run. Johnston is not slow, but we were expecting more speed there. But they did address speed later in the draft with Darius Davis. So, and he gives you some return ability as well. So he kind of fills that DeAndre Carter role for them. Tuli Tululupu, the edge rusher out of USC. Dayon Henley out of Washington State, the linebacker. I really like him. And so, looking at this draft, this is a really quality draft, adding to a playoff team from a season ago. Giving the big deal to Justin Herbert, locking him up, kind of taking care of some of the other players. A lot of people thought that was going to be the last year of Keenan Allen in Los Angeles. He's still there. Mike Williams is healthy now. Add Quentin Johnston to that mix, a speedster like Darius Davis, and all of a sudden it could get real scary out there with Justin Herbert pulling the strings. So what's not listed here could be ultimately the biggest acquisition of the offseason for the Chargers, and that's offensive coordinator. Offensive coordinator, what's my man from Dallas? Why am I blanking on his name? They got rid of Joe Lombardi, who was there. He went and joined his boy, Sean Payton, in Denver. It was never a good fit. That short passing game, extension of the run game, with a guy with a cannon like Justin Herbert, you think pushing the ball down the field would be priority number one, but that wasn't the case. They didn't have a ton of speed anyway, but Joe Lombardi's system really didn't fit, I think, the skill set of Justin Herbert. And so now, why am I blanking on the Boise State quarterback? Kellen Moore, that's his name, Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers. And I am not a big fan of their head coach. Um, I felt like he's made questionable decisions in the past, and sometimes I think he struggles with an identity. Right? Sometimes he's over aggressive. People call him out for it. He's like, I'm not changing. And then you get into a big spot, and all of a sudden he's not aggressive, and it backfires on him. And so I don't think he really knows what to do. And look, Brandon Staley has been really solid for the Chargers, but make no mistake about it, most teams with a young quarterback like Justin Herbert would love to marry him with a young offensive mind. If you get where I'm going, like teams want a Drew Brees, Sean Payton type of relationship. That's what teams are looking for. They want it. You don't necessarily even have to be young, but in the case of Kellen Moore, he is young. But you want Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Like that's what you're aiming for. Offensive mind, offensive guru with young quarterback, and just have them make beautiful music together. Obviously, Brandon Staley's a defensive-minded guy. If he can't get it done this year, and let's say that Kellen Moore comes in and they kill it, him and Justin Herbert are absolutely murdering it on the offensive side, and for whatever reason they don't get it done, he could be the replacement. They already have an in-house replacement, but we'll see what happens. A lot of the blame of last year went in the lap of Joe Lombardi. He's gone. Kellen Moore is in. Now let's see what happens. A lot of blame in Dallas fell on Kellen Moore's shoulders. We'll see what happens in Dallas now that he's gone. And Mike McCarthy is able to start calling the plays himself. So we're going to find out a lot about a lot. Let's look at the Chargers schedule. And home week 1 for the Dolphins, at the Titans week 2, at the Vikings week 3. So right out of the gates, you're looking at 3 playoff teams. Titans didn't make it last year, but we know they had some struggles with health and Ryan Tannehill and things of that nature last year. You don't want to sleep on the Titans, even though I told you last year I didn't think they were going to be good, and they weren't. That's a nice little start to the season, like in terms of tough opponents, especially the Titans and the Vikings on the road. So see how they navigate that. Week 4, home for the Raiders, and then you get an early bye. Could be a good thing, could be, a not so good thing. Come off the bye, Monday Night Football, home for the Cowboys. That should be fun. That should be a lot of fun there. Week 7 is the first time you see the Chiefs, and those are always big games. That's on the road at Arrowhead. You have no problems going into Arrowhead and winning. You should have won last year on a Thursday night. You blew that one. So I always look forward to Chiefs-Chargers games. Week 8, Bears, Sunday Night Football. Got to take care of business there. Jets, week 9, on the road, Monday Night Football, little Aaron Rodgers action. So 2 gunslingers going at it. That should be fun. Lions, week 10, at home. Road against the Packers, week 11. 12, you're home for the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. That's probably going to have some playoff implications, because if Cincinnati is Cincinnati, and we don't know the extent of the Joe Burrow injury and how much that could impact the Bengals season if he can't ever get back to where he needs to be to play at a high level. But if he's good, the Bengals are good. And if the Bengals are good, the Ravens are probably not winning that division. So now we're talking wild card, and we're jockeying for position. This week 12 matchup could be really big for both of these teams. We come down to the end and we start looking at wild cards. This head-to-head matchup could mean a lot. Week 13, same thing with the Patriots. I think they're going to be better than people think. And so, again, another team that could be in the mix for the wild card. Got to take care of business on the road there. Week 14, Broncos at the crib, a little bit of family business action, and you start to get real busy in the division down the stretch. In your final 6 games, you got 4 divisional opponents. So the schedule makers did not do you any favors. Hell, let's even condense that a bit. 4 out of your final 5 games are divisional foes. Okay, Broncos week 14, Raiders week 15 on the road on a Thursday night. Home for the Bills. That's on Peacock. So I'm assuming that's a Saturday game late in the season. Week 17, Broncos again, this time on the road. So you'll see the Broncos twice in a 4-week span. So twice in a month. And then you finish up with the Chiefs at home, either on a Saturday or a Sunday. And again, that could have playoff implications. So when you put all of that together, I think that the Chargers are good enough to improve upon the 10-7 record that landed them in the postseason last year. I think they're one game better this year at 11-6. Good enough to qualify for postseason ball, and we'll see what happens as Justin Herbert gets his second taste of playoff action and how they fare this time. And can he finally get a win? And I'd love to see them and the Chiefs do battle in the playoffs. Who knows? That could take place. But in any event, I got the Chargers at 11-6. So now let's take a look at the Raiders. The Raiders. 6-11 last year. First year of Josh McDaniels as their head coach, and it did not go well, which was fully expected. This year seems even worse. The offseason has been an abject disaster. As you can see, a lot of players changing teams here. It's almost like they're still turning over the roster and trying to turn them into the Las Vegas Patriots. Like they started the process last year. They're continuing that process this year. I don't think the results are going to be any better. As a matter of fact, I think they're going to be worse. I've already predicted that by the time we get to the trade deadline, Devontae Adams will want out and he will be demanding a trade. If I'm the Raiders, I oblige and get what I can get for him. You should be able to get a first-round pick for him for a team that might be contending. You're hoping that it kind of aligns, that there's a team looking to chase a chip in a position, needs some help at receiver, and you're able to coax somebody into giving you that first-round pick because you're going to need a quarterback and you're going to need some ammunition. And so the whole Josh Jacobs situation is toxic for them. They have no idea what they're doing. Devontae Adams had an issue with the offense in the offseason. This is the second year in a row someone on the offensive side of the football has questioned what the hell the Raiders were actually doing on the offensive side of the football. There's no more Derek Carr. You bring in Jimmy Garoppolo as if you've upgraded the position somehow. No more Darren Waller, which makes absolutely no sense. There's a lot fundamentally wrong with what the Raiders are currently doing and how they're set up. Mac Hollins was outstanding for you last year, and somehow you think it's okay to just let him walk away. I am absolutely floored at just how bad they've been at managing business in Vegas. This thing is a shit show, and to me, it's going nowhere fast. But let's take a look at what they did this offseason. So, obviously, the big news for them was how 2022 ended with Derek Carr being whisked away, pretty much saying, hey, we don't want you getting injured. No injury settlements here. You go away so that we can get rid of you this offseason. Good for Derek Carr to not agree to a trade or not put himself in a position to help the Raiders out. Like, I'm not giving you anything on the back end on the way out. Cut me and let me choose my next team. F y'all. Good for Derek Carr. They deserve that. So he's now a Saint. And obviously, you know, swapping him out for Jimmy Garoppolo was the big news of the offseason for them. So let's go through all of the players that are no longer in Vegas that are, you know, needle movers. So no Derek Carr, he's now a Saint. No Darren Waller, he's now a Giant. And I didn't feel like they got enough compensation for him, to be honest with you. Cleveland Farrell, they finally gave up on that experiment. He's now a 49er. Let's see. Denzel Perryman is a Texan. He was an offseason acquisition, I feel like a year or two ago from the Chargers. Mac Hollins, who had a career year last year for the Raiders. is now an Atlanta Falcon. Rock Yassin is now a Baltimore Raven. The cornerback position, excuse me. Andrew Billings is now a Bear. Let's see. I think that's all. Jarrett Stidham, who, did some good things towards the end of the season, is now a Bronco. Foster Moreau, so you not only trade away Darren Waller, but then you don't re-sign Foster Moreau. So he's now a New Orleans Saint. And so now you look at all of the guys that they brought in, and there's a bevy. So Marcus Peters is now on this team, and I think he's on his last legs in the league as a veteran corner who never had a step to give in the first place. So hopefully they understand that he's a zone corner really only, but we'll see how that works out for them. Jimmy Garoppolo, the big offseason signing at the quarterback position. Austin Hooper comes in. You lost all those tight ends and you replaced them with an old, aging Austin Hooper who can barely move. Good job there. Jacoby Myers, I like that signing, even though it feels like that whole, Vegas or New England to Vegas movement, but he's a good football player. So that's a good signing there. Brandon Faison comes over to try to help in the secondary from Indianapolis. Cam Sims, as a Commanders fan, I think he could be a really good Mac Hollins replacement. We'll see how he develops there, but losing Mac Hollins might not be as impactful if Cam Sims comes in and does what I know he's fully capable of doing. I like that signing. Robert Spillane, I think, is a really good inside linebacker, underrated. So I'd like him coming on board. Billy Ho, another expatriate coming on board there. Let's see. DeAndre Carter coming on. I like that. At the quarterback, at the wide receiver position, he just can do so many different things for you. Philip Dorsett, mixed bag there. We'll see. He can still run, though. Jordan Willis, he's interesting. Off the edge. See what they can get out of him. And let's see. Duke Shelley trying to get a new lease on life at the cornerback position. Don't love him. David Long, corner, getting a shot there. Jaquan Johnson at safety coming over. Marcus Epps was a big signing in free agency from the Eagles. He should help that secondary a lot. So it's a lot going on here with the Raiders. A lot going on. As you can see, look at their draft picks. Tyree Wilson was 7th overall selection in the first round. Michael Mayer. So you move on from a couple of tight ends, you bring in Michael Mayer. That's a big get for them. Those first two guys, you're hoping Tyree Wilson, he's super raw, super athletic, but super duper raw. You're hoping they don't strike out again with an edge rusher in the top 10 like they did with Cleveland Farrell. Byron Young, I think he was a 3rd round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Trey Tucker, the receiver out of Cincinnati. So some speed there. Jacorian Bennett out of Maryland, the corner, the nickel. So Aiden O'Connell, Purdue quarterback. So they got, some guys here, man, that can come in and really help them right away, man. Christopher Smith, the second, that's the safety from Georgia. Can't see the name here. Amari Burney and Nesta. What is that? Nesta Jade Silvera. So this is actually a really good crop of rookies coming in. It's a shame that their head coach is Josh McDaniels. Nothing good can happen with him as your head coach. And Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to make it through the entire season. This is going to be a train wreck because they don't have a quarterback. Billy Ho will be playing. He will be starting for them by week 7 because Jimmy Garoppolo's hurt. Trust me when I tell you this. He will not make it through the whole season. And if he does, he's going to stink. So it's going to be bad. let's take a look at their schedule. So, week 1, you are at Denver. Week 2, you're at Buffalo. Week 3, home on a Sunday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you're at the Chargers in week number 4. So let's hit the pause button for a second. Damn. Can we just say damn real quick? At Denver, we don't know what the Broncos are going to be, but it's still on the road in the division. At Buffalo in week 2, ouch. Home for the Steelers, that's good. But, Sunday Night Football, don't know what the Steelers are going to be, but not going to be easy. And then back on the road at the Chargers, ouch. Again. So 3 out of your first 4 are on the road against tough teams with, in the case of Denver and, hell, the first 3 games, quality defenses. We'll see what the Chargers are, but that's rough right out of the gate. Green Bay at home on a Monday night, week 5. Patriots at home, week 6. At the Bears, week 7. At the Lions, week 8 on Monday Night Football. Home for the Giants, week 9. And then home for the Jets, week 10. So it seems like all of your primetime games, like everybody wants to go to Vegas. Sunday night game in week 3. Monday night game in week 5. You do have one at Detroit in week 8, but you're home again Sunday Night Football for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, week 10. It's a tough schedule, man. At the Dolphins, week 11. Home for the Chiefs. I'm about to say, we haven't even gotten to the Chiefs yet. Home for the Chiefs, week 12. You have a bye week in week 13, so you have one of those late buys. I think week 13 is the latest bye you can get, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they dishing out week 14 buys. They might be dishing out week 14 buys. I think you might be able to get a 14, but 13 is pretty late. Come off the bye, home for the Vikings, week 14. Thursday night football against the Chargers at home. So another home primetime game. Christmas Day, you're at the Chiefs. At the Colts, week 17, and home for Denver in week 18 to finish up. So similar to the Chargers, 1, 2, 3 out of your last 4 are division games, and 4 out of your last 6 are division games. So your schedule is backloaded with divisional opponents. So you got to take care of business down the stretch. This is tough sledding if you're a Raiders fan, especially the beginning of the season when you don't really know how good you're going to be. You could lose confidence immediately, and before you even blink, you're already 1-3, 0-4. So, ouch. I got the Raiders, who were 6-11 last year. I got them in 5-12 this year. It could easily be 4-13, and they could be fighting for the number 1 overall pick. I think they're going to be in that mix for a top 5 pick. And I think 5-12 will put them right around the 5th or 4th pick overall in the draft. They're going to be bad this year. So let's go to the final team in this division, and that's the Denver Broncos. Let's take a look at what their offseason looked like. They were very aggressive this offseason, and similar to the Chargers, the biggest acquisition isn't listed, but we'll talk about him here in a second. But let's first look at the players that they lost this offseason. So Graham Glasgow is now a member of the Detroit Lions on that offensive line. Chase Edmonds is now in Tampa Bay, the running back position. Jacob Martin is now a Houston Texan. Brandon McManus is now a Jacksonville Jaguar. So I'll be interested to see who's going to be their place kicker this year. Did they draft a kicker? I don't know. Did they sign a kicker? I don't know. They signed Brett Maher. Ooh, that's nasty. We'll see how that turns out. We'll get to that in a second. Billy Turner is now a member of the Jets. He's a Swiss Army knife along the offensive line. see. Mike Boone at running back is now a Texan. Eric Saubert is now a Dolphin at the tight end position. Latavius Murray is now a Bill. Draymond Jones got a nice fat ass deal to move on to Seattle. I thought the Broncos could have retained him, but can't pay everybody. And they went out and got a dude that I think is just as, if not better, than him and Zach Allen. We'll talk about that in a second, though. But that's a big loss. I think it'll be mitigated, though. See, Marlon Mack, I feel so bad for him. He gets to Arizona. He's probably gonna have a shot to play there, and he just ruptured his Achilles. His career might be done. See, Brett Rippon, who we actually saw a couple of times over the past 3 or 4 years. He's now a Ram. Freddie Swain is now a Dolphin. Okay, so let's talk about the guys they brought in, and you got to start with their head coach. All right, out with Nathaniel Hackett. That was an epic fail, a massive disaster last year. In with Sean Payton, and with Sean Payton comes a different philosophical approach, which meant they were going to overhaul this roster. The first thing you notice is they went out and they spent on the offensive line. Russell Wilson was harassed last year, so they wanted to clean that up. And they really wanted to get better in the trenches on both sides. So you saw the emphasis being put there. So bringing in Frank Clark from the Chiefs is a big move for them. I just told you that they lost an edge rusher in Jacob Martin, so they needed some help off the edge. Ronald Darby is no longer there. That I classify that as a failed free agent signing from a few years ago. See, Mike McGlinchey was one of their higher priced items that they spent on this offseason to fortify that offensive line. Chris Manhertz comes over from Jacksonville to give them some blocking ability at the tight end position. Re-signed Kareem Jackson. They get their hands on Samaje Perine, who has really molded himself into a really quality all-purpose back. Can catch it out of the backfield, physical in between the tackles, good in short yardage situations. So he'll come over and help. Michael Burton comes over as a fullback from the Chiefs. So it's always good when you can steal from within the division. So that's a good get for them. Kyle Fuller comes in as a guard. Zach Allen is another big signing. And this is the reason why I think they're not going to miss Draymond Jones all that much. I think Zach Allen is ready to explode. He learned from J.J. Watt so much the last couple years in Arizona. And I think last year was his best year of his career, and I think he's ascending. So I love that signing there. Fabian Moreau, they get from the Giants. Quality corner, not a guy you want necessarily at the front of your group, but as a third or fourth option, that's a good guy to have in the secondary. We got to talk about this Brett Maher addition here in a second, but let's see if there are any more notable. Ben Powers from the Ravens is another addition to the offensive line to really give them some oomph. Jarrett Stidham, we talked about that already, coming over, gives them another quarterback in that mix. He'll probably be their backup quarterback behind Russell Wilson, so gives them a little bit more stability at the quarterback position. Marquez Callaway, I actually liked him in New Orleans. And with Tim Patrick going down already, I think that could end up being a much bigger signing than people anticipated when it happened. And so back to this Brett Maher, situation. He was so bad at the end of the season, but Maher was actually really good in Dallas for most of his time there. It just ended so poorly. And the bad part is not only did it end so poorly, it ended on the national stage for everybody to see. Like all of his misses were on national TV. That Buccaneers playoff game, the 49ers playoff game, like all of those misses, we got to see them. We literally watched this man go through hell in front of us. So if he can get over the yips, which is what he ended up having at the end of the season, then this isn't a big, he's got a big leg. You kicking in that altitude, he'll be just fine. But can he overcome that? We'll see. Brandon McManus had a nice little run in Denver, but he's now in Jacksonville. So we'll see how that turns out. Their draft class: Marvin Mims Jr., speedster wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas. I think is going to be a really good piece for them. Riley Moss. You know how I feel about white corners, man. I'm rooting for Riley Moss like hell. JL Skinner, safety out of Boise, and Alex Forsyth, center out of Oregon, is their draft class. And that's it's a condensed, compact class, but I think it could be ultimately a impactful class when it's all said and done. So let's go over to their schedule, take a look at what the Broncos are looking at this year. So week 1, home for the Vegas Raiders. Week 2, home for Washington. Week 3 at Miami. Week 4 at Chicago. Week 5, home for the Jets. Week 6, you're at Kansas City on a Thursday night. So that'll be the first, real massive test on the schedule. I mean, I guess the Dolphins would be too. And the Jets, I'm tripping. I'm acting like this is the Jets of old. So just stopping right there and looking at these first 6. Home for the Raiders, home for Washington, at Miami, at Chicago, home for the Jets, at Kansas City. We're going to find out a lot about the Denver Broncos in the first 6 weeks of the season, because you got to find a way to beat both Vegas and Washington in the first 2 weeks. If you lose one of those games, it better be to Washington. You can't lose to Vegas in week 1 at home. You can't lose a division game at home right out of the gates. That's not a good look. But if you come out of that thing unscathed at 2-0, then you go at Miami, that's a toughie. Chicago on the road, we'll find out, because nobody really knows what Chicago is going to be this year. But then the Jets and Chiefs in back-to-back weeks, worst case scenario, you got to find a way to come out of this thing no less than 3-3. You're hoping 4-2, but you're 2-4, you're 1-5. You won't be 0-6, but you're 2-4 or 1-5 after this. It's gonna be a rough year. It's gonna be a rough year. Week 7, Green Bay at home. Week 8, Chiefs at home. So you're done with the Chiefs after 8 weeks of ball, and you play the Chiefs. And we talked about this with Kansas City schedule, but you play the Chiefs twice in a 3-week span. Gonna have to find a way to beat them in one of those 2 games. Doesn't matter, home, away, doesn't matter. Just find a way to get one. Bye week number 9, you come off that bye and you're at Buffalo on a Monday night. Yikes. The following week, you're home for the Minnesota Vikings. And after that, week 12, home for the Cleveland Browns. Then you're at Houston, at the Chargers, at the Lions. So 3 straight road games in a row. We'll see how you navigate that. Then New England at home, the Chargers at home in week 17, and you finish up the season at Vegas in week number 18. So this is a really doable schedule. And outside of this stretch here with 3 straight roadies, it's not that bad of a setup. I mean, 3 straight road games is tough, though. But the bottom line is, they're going to be an improved team. Sean Payton's going to come in there. He's going to clean up some of the issues they had a season ago. They're going to be a much better run organization and operation. There won't be all the delay of games and illegal procedure type penalties that we saw from them and the sloppiness of the offense. They're going to be able to finish a lot better in the red zone. I think you're going to see a much better operation from the Broncos. That said, I still think that they play in a tough division and they're going to have to figure out some things. And in year 1, I don't think it's going to happen and come together just like that. But maybe next year look out for the Broncos, especially if Russell Wilson gets back to the level that I know he's capable of. I got the Denver Broncos, who were 5-12 a season ago. I got them at 9-8. I would not be shocked if they end up 10-7 and push for a playoff spot and make it 3 teams in this division. But I got them on the outside looking in at 9-8. I could see them getting to 10-7 though, and making the playoffs. But right now I got them 9-8 on the outside looking in of the postseason. So recapping for you real quick, I got the Kansas City Chiefs at 13, the Super Bowl defending Kansas City Chiefs at 13-4. I got the finishing in first place and winning the AFC West. We got the Los Angeles Chargers coming in second, like they did last year, at 11-6, improving upon the 10-7 mark from a season ago. I also have them making the playoffs as a wild card for the second consecutive year. And then I have the Raiders finishing in dead last at 5-12. They were third in this division at 6-11. I got them finishing 5-12 and dead last. And the Denver Broncos, who were in dead last year at 5-12, have them finishing 9-8 in third place and just missing out on the postseason. So, let's get to social media maneuvers. Y'all know what I am. I'm a midnight marauder. So let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. I do have a couple of super chats. Before I get to those, go ahead and let y'all know what it is. If you want your comment to be read, use the hashtag LouieTLive. If we have time, which we do, I can get to your comment. If you want to ensure, though, that your comment is read, use the super chat function to ensure that your comment is read. So with that said, let's get to the super chats. And we start with KC1588X. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I'm sure you're a Madden fan. Do you believe in the Madden curse? Why is Washington players complaining about EB being tough on them? Shaking my head. So I don't play Madden anymore. I was a massive Madden head back in the day, but I haven't picked up the sticks to play Madden well over a decade. My game playing days in terms of like sports games, 2K, Madden, all that, them shits are way over. All right. I'll play a fighting game every now and then. I'm a family man now, so I got to switch, and I love Super Smash Brothers, Mario Party, stuff like that. Stuff you can play with the family. I only get super competitive. Okay, I lied because I get competitive on Mario Party too, but I get super competitive on Smash Brothers, but I don't play Madden. Do I believe in the curse? I don't necessarily not believe in it, but I'm not like, oh my God, he's on the cover. He's definitely cursed this year. I'm just like, it's a coincidence that just keeps popping up, and you go, I'm just saying he was on the Madden cover, so was the last guy, so was the guy before that, and look what happened to all of them. But it's not an every year thing. So I think there's something to it, but I'm not like, oh my God, you stepped on a crack, now your mom's gonna break her back. I'm not that type of guy. So as far as players in Washington complaining about EB, again, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. Ron Rivera should not have made this public information. I think it was some of the older players, honestly. My guess, and again, we don't really need to get into who it was, but I'm guessing it was somebody like a Charles Leno, like an older offensive lineman, not used to this tempo, getting up there in age. Yo, what the hell is going on right now? That's my guess. Somebody like that. But it doesn't matter who it was. This information should not have been divulged to the masses. We should not have been made aware of this. And I don't think it was, a lot of players, and I think it's been blown out of proportion, to be honest with you. But again, until we get on the field and they see the results, you're going to have some guys questioning, why are we going so damn hard? And that's pretty much what happened. And Ron said, go talk to EB. They talked to him, and clearly they came to some kind of understanding, apparently. But again, that shouldn't have been public knowledge. So it's really nothing to see here, honestly. I swear, it's really nothing to see here. But every time I turn around, somebody's talking about it. So again, it became something more than what it really should have. And Ron has to know better. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, the Jets don't move the needle for me. Huh. I mean, if you're not a Jets fan, if you're not an AFC fan, if you're not, if you're just a Washington fan, they're not going to move the needle for you. But I find the Jets to be fascinating because of Robert Saleh and his personality. He's one of these young, energetic coaches. Those guys do something for me. Like watching quarterbacks, seeing Kevin O'Connell and all that energy. We know what Sean McVay is and the energy he has on the sidelines. I like young coaches. I like the energy that they bring, and Robert Saleh is another one of those dudes. It's just full of energy, man. So Jeff Albrecht looks like he's going to be, the equivalent of what Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley were last year in terms of, coordinators or position coaches. So he looks like he's going to be one of the stars of the show. And then obviously Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, that dynamic, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. There are enough intriguing players, enough storylines, enough things going on that I think it's going to be a really good one. And again, they could be a Super Bowl team, right? You just don't get that on Hard Knocks very often. So not for everybody. You're not alone. You're not the only one that it doesn't move the needle for. So, Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Jets, he said, overrated Jets maybe win 7 games. So the Jets are overrated. They maybe have 7 wins in your, estimation. The only way I see them having the kind of season, because what you're pretty much describing is they would have this similar season to what the Broncos had last year. Not quite as bad if they get to 7, but you said maybe. So you're thinking 5 or 6, maybe 7. You're saying it as if 7 that's the max they can get to. That would mean they had a Russell Wilson type of collapse. I just don't see Aaron Rodgers playing that poorly. Unless the offensive line is terrible, Rodgers doesn't have a chance to sit back there and throw the football, or he gets hurt. I don't see them finding themselves in a situation where they only win 7 games. They're a really talented football team. But stranger things have happened. We said the same thing about the Broncos last year, but we were never sold on Nathaniel Hackett either. I believe in Robert Saleh. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for those super chats. Let's get to the comment section and see if you guys have anything to say. So Rich says, I know it's been a minute since it ended, but props to you for the Reign of Terror and doing that whole series from memory. It looks like shit's impressive. Yeah, that was all done from the noggin, man. I try to use my brain in those types of ways. I pride myself on being sharp mentally. Can't remember everything. And I forgot some things that I wanted to mention, and people brought it up. And that's the beauty of that series, too, is I'm not going to remember everything. You guys are going to remember some things and bring it up. And then I go, oh, yeah, that did happen. Like, I didn't even bring up the whole ice cream situation with Mike Nolan when he first got there. I mean, there's so much shit that we could have talked about that we didn't, that I should have talked about, because the Reign of Terror was all about Daniel Snyder. And, the Mike Nolan ice cream thing is just a classic story where you go, this guy's a dick, right? Of the highest, variety. It's ridiculous. So pause. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. HTTR Carson writes, I would not be shocked if the Raiders are the number one overall pick in the number one overall pick discussion. I wouldn't either. We're on the same page. I would not be shocked if the Raiders find themselves in that conversation when it is all said and done. Speaking of the Raiders, Henry Ruggs today was sentenced to 3 to 10 years for that fatal November 2021 drunken accident that he had. So you just hate to see dudes throw their life away like that. And I would assume that their family is probably not happy about that amount of time. But while we were on the subject of the Raiders, I just thought I'd throw that in there. I think they're going to be in that conversation at some point. I don't think they're ultimately going to come away with the number one overall pick, but I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up in that conversation somewhere. Rich Ritchie, thank you for this. Rich Ritchie writes, glad you're back. Need that cook crack. I was jonesing. LTN podcast is fire. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. My guy, Nick at Night. It's been a long time. It feels like it's been a long time, Nick. My guy, Nick at Night. Right? So we don't talk about Ponder, Lou. Don't do me like that again. I don't need to remember that. Yeah, and it's bad because I drug him up and he wasn't even in that 2014 draft. So that makes it even worse. I'm bringing up bad memories that are unnecessary and unrelated to the conversation that we're having. So I sincerely apologize for that trauma, okay? Because those were some dark days in Vikings football when you were trying to win games with Tavares Jackson and Christian Ponder. And remember the playoff game with Webb at quarterback against the Packers on the road? I think that was 2012. Ooh, that's some bad stuff, man. I apologize for that. Mike Jink, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Mike Jink writes, we saved Miles Jack from becoming a plumber. Y'all signed a couple of linebackers. We'll see if they end up working out for y'all. See what y'all trying to do over there. Y'all lost a lot of dudes in that defense, so you're trying to replenish some of those guys. We'll see if some of these moves that you've made end up working out for you. We'll see. See where we are. We were right here. Rich writes, I like the Manziel Untold, but I feel like it didn't tell the full story. It never said why he had an alcohol addiction and why the family stayed by his side. It just said what happened. I'm confused by that. Like, let me read this again to see if it makes more sense the second time I read it. I like the Manziel Untold, but I feel like it didn't tell the full story. It never said why he had an alcohol addiction and why the family stayed by his side. So we could see why he had an alcohol addiction. He drank alcohol all the time. And it wasn't just an alcohol addiction. It was drugs too. The drugs were worse than the alcohol, if you ask me. That's what was really, like, him being hungover because he liked to party. Like, he talked about it. He's like, by the time he got to college, he was like, I was playing football for the love of the game in high school. When I got to Texas A&M and I got a taste of what it was like to be the starting quarterback and winning games, you heard what the dude said. His friend was like, win or lose, we booze. Like, they were getting it in. It didn't matter. Whether they won the game or lost the game, Johnny was out to have a good time, right? So by the time he got to, so 2 years of that, 2 years of being big man on campus, you can go anywhere, do anything you want. By the time he started getting all that bread for those autograph signings he was doing and stacking up all those chips, this man was in the clubs probably 3-4 times a week at that point. I mean, he was showing up for games like, So I love Cliff Kingsbury because he just doesn't give a shit. He didn't give a shit when he was in Arizona. He didn't give a shit when he was at Texas Tech. Like, I could see how he could get a job because he just, like, he's laid back, cool as hell. I can see why him and Sean McVay are friends because they have similar personalities. But Cliff Kingsbury was like, look, bro, you drunk as F right now. And I'm telling you, you better go out there and win this goddamn game. If you play like shit, I'm not coming to your defense. I'm not saving you. And then he went out there and he was like, yo, he played the best game that I had seen him play up until that point. And so I was like, yo, do whatever you got to do to be ready. You know what I'm saying? That kind of attitude. And like his dad said, when you send your kid off to college, you are entrusting that university, its coaches, staff, and all that are going to take care of your child, discipline them the way that you would, and make sure that they are accountable for their actions. They were enablers at Texas A&M. They knew he was going out partying. They knew he was coming in drunk. They were protecting him. So that's how it got out of control. Nobody checked Johnny Manziel at any point. He was allowed to do what he wanted to do, and the family didn't stay by his side the entire time. So you missed certain pockets of the document because his dad said, I was done. I was over it. When he got to Cleveland and he was cutting up and he got into it with his girlfriend, his dad was like, I was done. I was out. And it wasn't until he bottomed out and had nowhere to turn, no money, and he came back home was when he was able to reestablish a relationship with his family. Now, I can't say his mom or his sister weren't trying to help him and things of that nature, but, you know, you might have been looking for more than they were willing to give. Like, you were asking for a 2-hour and 15-minute documentary. I don't need that much. The $130 that we got was perfectly fine. And I thought they told the story well. They gave us all we needed, I felt like. But you felt like there was more to be told. I enjoyed it. You liked it. I loved it. So I think that's the difference. I got a super right here from Eric Sunderland. What's going on, Eric? Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Eric writes, hey, Louie, what Kansas City wide receiver do you think takes a step as wide receiver 1 in that offense? I don't love any of them, but when you have Kelsey, I guess it don't matter. I mean, you look at it last year, they truly didn't have a number 1 per se. I think Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS kind of split that duty last year, but there really wasn't a true number 1. So it's hard to say who's going to, step up in that role. That's part of the reason why their name was always in the DeAndre Hopkins situation, because they don't truly have a number 1. But to your point, Travis Kelce is your number 1. So he's going to, by virtue of him being who he is, he's going to open up the outside. He's going to command so much attention inside that I could see Sky Moore stepping up this year, being more of a factor. MVS is still there, so he'll still be in the mix. They drafted, and that's who you should probably be looking out for. I don't know if he'll have that kind of an impact year 1, but Rashee Rice is a guy that I think can step into that Juju Smith-Schuster role, but I think he could end up being so much more for that offense, because I've always felt like when they didn't win the Super Bowl, they were missing that Sammy Watkins, Juju Smith-Schuster type guy, that other guy, right? Because when you had Tyreek Hill, when you had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, they just needed one more dude, and that's what Sammy Watkins was. And then when he was always hurt, and then they finally got rid of him, they never really replaced him. And I thought last year, that's when they – oh, and don't forget they have God, they got so much stuff. They got Kadarius Toney too. So I think he hurt himself, though. If I'm not mistaken, he got hurt. But he'll be back at some point. If he's, I hope I didn't just put an injury on him that doesn't exist. But whatever the case may be, they're loaded at receiver, and they drafted, Rashid Rice. They went out and signed Richie James, and it's Patrick Mahomes. So whatever he's got, he's gonna turn it. If your guy's a C plus, he's gonna be a B minus, or a B with Patrick Mahomes. If your guy's a B minus, he's gonna be an A minus with Mahomes at quarterback. So he's gonna elevate all of these dudes. I would say Sky Moore, Rashid Rice, and MVS are the three candidates to step up. That would be my guess. Kadarius Toney, I don't think is a natural enough receiver I think he's more of a gadget guy right now, but a full year in the offense, more comfortable. Maybe he could become more of a factor. We'll see. Let's see. Rich. What's going on, Craig? If you're still out there, man, always good to hear from you and chop it up with you. Rich says, like he said, he didn't want anything to do with football anymore. There wasn't anything they really said as to why he felt that way. They didn't go in depth like they could. I mean, think about it. They didn't really need to, because he talked about losing the love for football. Like, he never was a studier. He never was a guy that was doing the extra work outside of the practice field. His game was predicated on just being Johnny Manziel and playing backyard football. So when that didn't work anymore in the NFL, and now it actually became a job. Like, remember, he talked about in college and in high school, it was fun because he was around his boys. He was around Mike Evans, who ended up being one of his best friends at Texas A&M. He was around a bunch of dudes that, he could kick it with, go out, have beers with, all that good stuff. You get to the NFL, and it's a job now. It's not fun anymore. Now, too much is given, much is expected. All right. They picked you in the first round. Like, go listen to that Merrill Hodge evisceration from 2013, or I think it's 2014. Go listen to that Merrill Hodge evisceration and listen to what all that entails of being a first round pick and a starting quarterback in the NFL, and how shit can change real quick and guys will turn on you real quick. And I think all of those things happened to Johnny Manziel when he got to Cleveland. So it made him, I think him losing the love for football started with the NCAA investigating him because he wasn't getting paid for his name and image and likeness. And he watched all the money that the university was getting hand over fist because of him. All the number 2 jerseys they were selling, all these autographed balls he was signing. He wasn't getting any kickback from any of this. And he's like, I'm out here busting my ass for them, and I'm over here broke. And then the NCAA wants to come after me? Yeah, okay. That's when he started to turn, his heart for football started to turn cold. And I thought they did a pretty good job of painting that picture, but yeah. We didn't see it the same way, I guess. Let's see. Nick says Chiefs 12-5, Chargers 10-7, Broncos 9-8, Raiders 3-14. So we're pretty much seeing it the same way. I got the Chiefs winning one more game. I got the Chargers winning one more game. I got the Broncos with the exact same record. And you got the Raiders being 3-14 will put them in a position to be drafting number 1 overall. I don't quite have them being that bad. I got them at 5-12, which won't get them the number 1 overall pick, but I think it'll get them a top 5 pick, 6, somewhere in that neighborhood. Let's see. All right. Nick Riley says, man, one of the worst quarterback duos I've ever seen. John David Booty and my man Joe Webb, bro, was cheeks. They tried to move him to wide receiver. It was bad, bro. It was bad at the end of that 12 season for y'all, man. Yikes. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. My mind's playing tricks on me. Anyway, so let's go ahead and finish up this show with garbage time. So preseason ball is upon us. Tomorrow we will get 2 games. Let me look up the 2 games that we'll get tomorrow. NFL preseason week 1. And so we will get a full slate of preseason games this week. I cannot wait. You get Houston at New England. Both of these games will be on NFL Network, by the way. 7 o'clock, Houston at New England, and 10 o'clock, Minnesota at Seattle. So the second one, I'm not really looking forward to that. There's really nothing there to see. That 7 o'clock New England or Houston at New England game should be juicy because you're going to see C.J. Stroud. You're going to see a lot of them probably. And I think you're going to see, because this is what Belichick used to do with Brady, I think you're going to see Mac Jones out there, and he might throw the bitch 24 times in the first half. So I think that 7 o'clock game could be rather entertaining. Not so much on the nightcap. I wouldn't be shocked if Kirk doesn't play at all. Same with Geno. I think Pete Carroll has shown that his starters really don't play a whole hell of a lot in the preseason. So really not looking forward to that. Then Friday is when it really gets going. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games on Friday. Giants at the Lions, Steelers at the Bucks, Packers at the Bengals, Falcons at the Dolphins, and Washington at Cleveland, and Denver at Arizona. And then we get into Saturday, and we'll be back on Friday before those wave of games hit, so we can talk about them a little bit, because I would have already watched the 2 Thursday games by then, and then we can talk about some of the Friday games and Saturday and so forth and so forth. So the reason I bring it up is because last year I made a big deal out of how the league was trending with teams opting to not play their starters in the preseason. And, to each its own. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I just feel like you need some work in the preseason. I'm not telling you to go out there and play your guys 40 snaps in the preseason, but I think they need some work at some point, whether it's the first preseason game or the third or the second. They just need to be out there at some point. But if you have joint practices and you feel like that suffice, by all means, knock yourself out. But I see Nick says Jordan Addison about to cook up. He better slow the hell down. I know that much. You better slow his ass down. I think you're going to see this preseason, unlike last year, you're going to see a lot of teams playing their starters this year. So I think the preseason is going to be a little bit more enjoyable than it was last year or even the year before, where it really started to become a phenomenon to not play your starters in the preseason. So many teams have young players, young quarterbacks in particular. You put your young quarterback out there, you're going to put the offensive line in front of him to protect him. You put the offensive line out there, you're going to give him targets and weapons to throw the football to. So you see where I'm going with this. Like C.J. Stroud in Houston, they're going to play their starters because they're putting C.J. Stroud out there. They're not going to put him out there with a bunch of bums, right? I think Mac Jones has a lot to prove in New England, and Belichick has always been pro preseason, where he's going to get you some work at some point. So you're going to see Mac Jones, I think, in at least 2 of these 3 preseason games, if not all 3 of them. Wouldn't be shocked to see Daniel Jones out there once or twice. Same with the Lions. I think you're going to see Jared Goff out there a little bit. They still have some things to prove. The Buccaneers have a quarterback competition, so you're going to see their ones quite a bit in the preseason. Kenny Pickett needs work, so I think you're going to see him in that Steelers offense out there. Jordan Love needs a lot of work. I think you're going to see the Packers play Jordan Love a little bit in the preseason. Desmond Ridder, again, young quarterback, first time as the unquestioned starter. He needs some work. I expect to see him quite a bit in the preseason. Washington and Sam Howell, same thing as the Falcons with Desmond Ridder. Deshaun Watson probably needs to knock off some more rust after playing the back end of last season. So I think you're going to see them a little bit. Sean Payton has already said Russell Wilson is playing in the first preseason game. So that's a far cry from last year where I don't think he played in a single preseason game last year. The Titans, even if they're not playing their starters, they got a couple of quarterbacks there that I want to see. I want to see what your boy from Kentucky, Will Levis, looks like. I want to see what Malik Willis looks like. So even if they're playing with second and third stringers, I'm still interested in what those young boys look like. Justin Fields probably needs reps in the preseason. Indy, you're going to see Will Richardson quite a bit. Will, not Will. What's his first name? His first name is not Will. I put Will Levis and Richardson. Anthony. His name's Anthony Richardson. You're going to see Richardson a ton in the preseason for the Colts. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to get a ton of preseason work. He'll probably get some, but he knows that offense. I don't know if he'll get a whole hell of a lot, but Bryce Young's going to play in the preseason. You see where I'm going with this, right? Like, it's a lot of teams with young quarterbacks with situations that I think necessitate playing your starters somewhat in the preseason. I think we're going to see a lot more teams playing their guys than we've seen in previous years. So I'm excited about the preseason this year because I think it's going to be a little bit more entertaining, and you're going to see a lot more teams putting their starters out on the field than we have in past years. But anyway, that is my garbage time. So JCam Man 99 says, I missed the call-in options for the divisional predictions. I say Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, and the Raiders. I'm assuming that's the order you think they're going to finish in. Anyway, I digress. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 354th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all on Friday when we will jump into the next division. So we're going to skip over the NFC East, which would have been the next division because they were the Super Bowl runner-ups. But I want to save that for when I get on live with the Super Friends. So we will skip from there and we will go to the teams that were in the championship games. And we will go to Cincinnati. They were the next closest team to making it to the Super Bowl. So we will go to the AFC North next. And then after that, we will head to the NFC West, where the 49ers reside. So, and we'll continue till we knock out all 8 divisions, all 32 teams. So, I look forward to chopping it up with y'all. We'll have some preseason ball to talk about, some things we can discuss from Thursday's action. We'll look forward to Friday and Saturday's action and over the weekend. And you'll probably see me over the weekend, at least once as we get into all of this. If you're a Washington fan, you'll see me Friday night after the Browns and Commanders come to a close. We'll be chopping it up, talking about that. So you'll be seeing me probably multiple times over the weekend. It's football season. I'm in preseason form. I'm trying to get whipped into shape, so bear with me. Should be fun. Anyway, I digress. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care, and I look forward to chopping it up with y'all next time. God bless. Oh, yeah, if you're out there and you haven't already, sign up for the Louie T Network exclusives. The links will be down in the comment section. I will pin that comment there. And what I will start doing is I will start dropping that in the description of these videos as well so that you can sign up there too. But if you haven't already signed up, the links are there. Fill out the registration form, pay your registration fee, and get locked in to some of these LTN exclusives. I look forward to beating all of y'all up this year in the LTN exclusives. I got my ass whooped last year. I'm out for revenge. So I'll see you guys next time. God bless. Good night. As the calendar turns to August, it can only mean one thing. The NFL season is right around the corner. And with that in mind, the LouieTeeNetwork exclusives are back like cooked crack. Choose from any of the 3 or all 3 of the LTN exclusives: Winners and Losers League, Soul Survivor Pool, Weekly Pick'em,
LouieTeeNetwork.